So next we have European Investment Bank, 1958, Luxembourg. So here they have annual financing of 74.4 billion US dollars. Then IDB, Inter-American Development Bank Group, $16 billion. IFC, this logo you may have seen of, International Finance Corporation. So this was founded in 1956, Washington DC, USA. $11.1 billion. Then here we have ISDB, Islamic Development Bank Group, Jeddah, $7.8 billion. New Development Bank, Shanghai, China, $7.2 billion. And finally, the World Bank, this belongs to the World Bank Group, headquartered in Washington DC. It was founded in 1944, and this has 65.9 billion dollars, like annual financing this thing. And it works in sub-Saharan Africa, East Asia, and the Pacific, South Asia, Europe, and Central Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, Middle East, and North Africa. These are the places. And mandate, if you see what it talks about here, working for sustainable solutions that reduce poverty and build shared prosperity in developing countries. So these are some multilateral banks. Their contributions we will see in the coming slides. But before that, let's see the heads and the other office bearers of like these multilateral banks, what they have to say. So Marcos Trogiu is the president of New Development Bank. The unprecedented crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic has once again called for the global development community to act together in response to common challenges. We as MDBs must further strengthen collaboration and partnerships, not only among ourselves but also with other development partners from both public and private spheres. Together we can help bring the world closer to the SDGs by 2030. Next we have the President of Asian Development Bank. As Asia and the Pacific continues its development journey and recovers from COVID-19 pandemic, it is more important than ever to focus on achieving the SDGs. Mobilizing domestic financial resources while ensuring debt sustainability is vital and will allow our partners' governments to strengthen social safety nets and invest in high quality green, resilient and sustainable infrastructure to benefit the poorest. Then we have President of African Development Bank. This joint report reflects our collective engagement and strong commitment to accelerate progress towards the SDGs. To accelerate Africa's development, we will continue joining investment hands across the globe. As we move into the decade of action, we will accelerate the pace, the scale and speed of our interventions on the continent to help countries realize the aspirations of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Next we have Governor, Council of Europe Development Bank. The SDGs are the cornerstone of MDB support for sustainable and broad-based economic and social development. This joint MDB report reflects our common endeavor, diverse organizations, each with a unique mandate and focus, joining forces and working toward the same goals. Further we have Managing Director, International Monetary Fund, IMF. It is paramount that institutions such as the IMF, the World Bank and other multilateral development banks retain a focus on the longer-term objectives embodied in the SDGs, in particular the fight to end absolute poverty. This requires continued emphasis on supporting education, health systems and social protection, but also on the types of infrastructure investments that can drive economic growth while protecting the environment. Progress in these areas will depend importantly on domestic revenue mobilization as well as external public and private financing. Lastly, we have the President of World Bank Group, helping countries bring people up in terms of their jobs and incomes, in terms of their overall living standards. That's the goal. So if you see all of these, like MDB office bearers, like heads, working heads, executive heads, they have spoken about the mandate of SDGs and how they are there, to strive to achieve, like these SDGs, in their respective, like regions. Yeah, so here we have some like a snapshots, like how these MDBs have helped, like achieving these SDGs across, like a different regions, different continents. So we will see a glimpse about SDG 2. AFDB's Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation program aims to reach 40 million farmers by 2023 and add 120 million metric tons to the African food basket. Okay, so this is this interesting, like snapshot, from continent of Africa, how these MDBs, like one of that MDBs like AFDB is working towards achieving, like a food security in this particular, like a place, this particular continent, right? Then related to SDG 3, we have ADB's health initiatives in Tonga will enable 100% of the patients to have a unique digital health identifier. Okay, so Tonga, you may be aware of, is a country, right, and languishing with like a lot of issues, like of poverty, food, like related like insecurities, and not so good, like a health and well-being over there. So this, like a unique digital health identifier, of the individual persons will help, like keeping the record, keeping the track of each and every patient, and providing, like a logistics and other, like supports needed for them, right, at national level. So like like such initiatives are going to definitely help. In Indian, like a scenario, you may be aware of Aadhaar, right? So Aadhaar is a unique, like a biometric, like identification of the citizens of India, which brings, like everyone to the, like this government's, like this UIDAI, like this network, where, like their identity is of course, like kept very secret. It's a encrypted, like a platform, but at the same time it provides, like a government and other, like supporting agencies with this unique, like identification number of every individual, every citizen who is registered on this portal, for availing, like a number of like a public, like a facilities, public services and amenities, and like helps which are coming from top to bottom, right? So it helps maintaining actually transparency, truthfulness, and it helps actually fighting like a corruption, at multiple levels. And there are number of examples, like a positive examples of like a Aadhaar being implemented in Indian scenario for achieving, like a like a lot of targets, like even public distribution systems, if you see, is now effectively being managed, like using Aadhaar. So only the genuine, recipients and the people who are actual needy, are getting the, like actual benefits. It's not going in the wrong hands, right? So that way a number of resources, a huge volume of resources can be saved and prevented from going into the wrong hands, right? Helping the needy, the real needy, right? So this digital, like health identifier, what we are seeing here from the Tonga, is definitely going to, like bring, like fruits. And that is one of the advantages of, like information technology sector, which has grown, like tremendously in the last few decades in India, and like across the world. So computing facilities, internet, right, and all of these, like IT related, like services, they are helping, like SDGs also. This is one of the beautiful examples. Further, on fourth SDG, quality education, we have the ISDB's Mozambique Secondary Education Project created a better learning environment for 40,000 students, increasing girls' participation, and raised pass rates from 55% to 80%. Okay, so you can see even in this education sector, we are talking about Mozambique. Okay, in this country, how this has helped, like particularly girl students, their participation and their performance. Okay, so from 55%, that means, close to like, like a 50 half, like a little above, like a half, to 80%, which is, like a good. So at least, like a 80% is achieved, and whatever remaining 20%, I am sure in the coming years, in the coming decades, they will be able to, like a plug even this, right? So that's a huge, like a growth. If you see, like a from 55, like to, like a 80%, right? So it's a good, like a growth, like a register in the girl students, going for, like their studies. Next we have on SDG 5, gender equality. More than 17,000 women entrepreneurs have received loans from the EBRD's partner banks for its women in business programs. Okay, so yeah, empowering like a women at every front, like just like in the recent years, if you see how this awareness and how this consciousness is coming to, like a put women at the equal front. Well, of course they are equal, it's just the society, the rest half of the society has to realize this and grip them, like a, this like a their, like a long pending, right? But yesterday itself I was reading an article, like in which the UN's like a Director General has mentioned, effectively, like in achieving gender equality by 100%, it may take almost 300 years. Okay, so that's a practical, like a kind of, like a, like a observation, based on like how improvements are being made with every passing year, every passing month. Okay, and with that pace, it is going to take, like next 300 years. This is, which is really mind-boggling. Why can't this be accelerated and be achieved in a very short span of time effectively, right? So that puts like a lot of emphasis on the, like a bottlenecks which are existing in today's like a society, in every platform, every organization, which has kind of like a not supported, like a women fraternity in achieving their rightful place. Okay, but yes, there are, like a number of like successful examples, successful stories coming from across the world, like how this, like a thing is like a slowly improving, right? So this is one of the examples, like how, like a women in business programs, can also get, like their rightful place. So 17,000 women entrepreneurs, have benefited from EBRD's like this scheme. Next we have about SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. On that, NDB's Historic Cities program in the Russian Federation seeks to restore cultural heritage and increase the annual tourist inflow to 9 cities by 50% from 2017 to 2024. Okay, so if you see like a historic cities program, right, in Russian Federation, like Russia. So and like it's talk about cultural heritage and increase in annual tourist, like inflow from by 50%. So this is the, like a target they have kept, between, like these two, like a years 2017 to 2024. During these many years, this has to be like achieved with the help of, like a NDB's Historic Cities program. So this is also one of the, like a beautiful examples where, like this cross cultural connection and like a interrelationship can be, like a prompted, initiated, and can be taken up in like a much, like a faster pace. Next we have SDG 13, climate action. The MDBs are supporting climate action and adopting climate financing and Paris Agreement alignment targets. Okay, so well, all of these MDBs, if you see, they are like doing their role, and in a way they are definitely contributing to the climate action, because most of these SDGs are actually like climate related, like a phenomena up to like a certain extent. Some of them actually are very much directly into this, and they have a very high share of like extent through which they are affected. But yeah, mostly all of them are also affected at some degrees, if you study their like individual targets and indicators, right? So any like improvement, like which is supported by like MDBs, anywhere on the planet, related to these SDGs, is definitely a positive, like a contribution towards SDG 13 also, right? So this is this example. Then we have come to SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. Here, safeguard policies help avoid and mitigate potential environmental impacts of MDB investments. Okay, so like such policies which actually like help like mitigating like impacts. So like impact, like how it is calculated and all that. Okay, so how this impact further can be minimized, overall bringing like lower impacts to the environmental degradation, which is happening for last several decades and perhaps 2 centuries, right? So MDB investments are definitely helping prevent that also. Then we have about SDG 15, life on land. The IDB Group's Natural Capital Lab aims to drive innovation in the sustainable use and conservation of landscape and marine ecosystems. So how we have seen aquatic life and even life which is living on the land have come to the direct threat by industrial processes, units, and pollution and overconsumption, etc., right? So this IDB's groups like a natural capital lab, if you see this initiative, maybe you can search for it separately for your knowledge and see in detail what is it and how they are doing it. But definitely it is helping bringing conservation of landscape and marine ecosystems, as mentioned over here. Then we have SDG 14, life below water. The MDBs are scaling up their efforts to protect the oceans, including through better waste management. Yeah, so most of the waste today, if you see, either it goes to the landfills or it travels somehow to the oceans, right? And in oceans there are a huge deposits of a waste, whether it is floating or whether it is suspended in the water or whether it has gone down and it is settled at the bottom of the oceans, right? So everywhere there is a human waste, there is a better waste created by a human society. Okay, so how this can be actually tackled and managed? So MDBs are are definitely helping up such schemes and initiatives also across the planet. Then very importantly, SDG 1. The World Bank's 1 billion support for accelerating India's COVID-19 social protection response will scale up cash transfers and food benefits and develop more integrated social protection systems. So an example from our own country itself. Okay, so World Bank has given this funding of billion US dollars for accelerating COVID-19 protection response, like vaccines, other protection gears, right, and devices and stuff, okay, to help a population to survive and mitigate this COVID-19 pandemic effectively, okay, bringing in a huge benefits in terms of economy, of course, and on social factors, right? So it's a huge this thing where there is a big number of people living below poverty lines, because how to help them. And you may be aware of these COVID vaccines were actually made free by government of India, and with the contribution of different state governments and several such agencies. And majority of these vaccines, except a few cases and instances at some at point of time, majority of these vaccines were given free of cost to the entire populace of India, right? Which is a very a huge exercise at a global level. If you see, it involves huge investments in terms of rupees and dollars, technology and manufacturing and distribution, and that too logistics, because some of these vaccines actually require cold storage, that continued cold chain, right? So maintaining that continued cold chain in such a tough locations where there may not be a consistent and continuous uninterrupted power supply, or a transportation a network, a challenging one, right? So despite of all of these challenges, this feat has been achieved, and a majority of population, you can refer to the Ministry of Health Government of India's website for the recent data, how many people are vaccinated for their first round, second round, and the tertiary a booster dose also, okay. And it was forcefully implemented by a government to begin with the people of elderly age and the people with comorbidities, you may remember. And yeah, so it's an immense a feat in itself, also supported by MDBs, World Bank, etc. Then coming down to the SDG 8, we have decent work and economic growth. In Jordan, IFC's support to the garment sector will help increase exports by $100 million annually by 2021. Okay, so Jordan, you may be like knowing, like this country, right? So not so like a strong GDP, and in terms of volume, size, and like a growth rate. Okay, so IFC's like a support for government sector here, particularly if you see, is going to help like exports by $100 million annually by 2021. Okay, so all of these people who are associated, who are part of like this like a industry, government like a sector over here, they are going to benefit, whether they are manufacturers, like weavers, like or the tailors, or like suppliers, transporters, all of this network, so contributing to all of those stakeholders in multiple ways, and spurring like an economic growth in this particular country. Next, we have about SDG 16, Peace, Justice and Strong Institutions. The EBRD supported Ukraine's development of an e-procurement system, saving the government about 1.1 billion euros. Okay, so that's like again a humongous like feat, humongous like a volume of expenditure which was saved by like the Ukraine's government. Okay, for like adopting this e-procurement system. So if you see, like India has also adopted like a similar like a platforms, okay, where e-tendering is now allowed. So all the physical tendering processes from the like erstwhile years, now they have been completely stopped, and it's all digital like a platform only, where you can like participate, or like a bid for like these things, or submit your own bid. Okay, which saves like time, resources, which brings a lot of transparency to the whole process, reducing corruption, right, and all of those things, right. Plus it accelerates like this whole process in a very timely, like an efficient manner, right. So there are like a number of like benefits of adopting like such systems. One beautiful example from Ukraine on EBRD's like initiative. Further, we have on SDG 9, Industry, Innovation and Infrastructure. The MDBs are investing in frameworks and standards to assess the quality of infrastructure investments. So assess the quality of infrastructure investment. So if you see, this is the like a mandate over here, this is the objective over here. So there is already kind of like a investment going on into the like a creating infrastructure, right. So if this is just a sketch of a bridge, okay, so you can just understand like how to ensure like a good quality of this like infrastructure, because it should definitely last for a long period of time. A huge like a cost goes into executing and bringing like these things to reality, right. So this investment actually must bear like a fruit into its maximum like a possible like a extent, right. So having a check on those by like a such like a frameworks, so MDBs are investing in those like a frameworks to like assess these. So there's another like a beneficial like a point. Now to the SDG 10, reduced inequalities. The CEB's financing helped create 6,000 places in France to accommodate asylum seekers and other vulnerable people. You may be aware of Europe and America and many like such advanced countries. Actually, they get huge like influx of asylum seekers and refugees. Okay, legally or even illegally, many of them they try like landing to these shores like unofficially. Sometimes landing in a very vulnerable like a situation, and sometimes even they like they die, right. So there's a very catastrophic situation happening in the Europe right now. So how Europe can deal with this? So CEBs like a financial like a help create 6,000 like such places where like these asylum seekers, these people, the vulnerable people coming from like other places, other countries, can be temporarily accommodated or maybe permanently settled. Okay, so this kind of initiative reducing like inequality. So such a noble like initiative of like this SDGs held by CEBs. Then on the front of SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, AIIB's wind power project in Kazakhstan will mitigate 260,623 tons of CO2, and generate 311 gigawatt hours of clean electricity annually, right? So you can see in this particular country, right? So there are very high winds, like typically in this country. Okay, it comes from like a central, like a western, like Asian, like a region. Okay, and so how this can be actually utilized, this geographical, like a feature, and can bring in, like a more greener, and cleaner, like a form of energy for its consumption. So that's like investment in this particular sector. SDG 6, more than 3 million people are expected to benefit from the NDB's water supply project in rural India. So another example from India. Okay, so yeah, so you can see over here for water supply projects in rural India, right? So there are 3 million, 30 lakh people are going to get like benefits for like a fresh like and potable and safe like a water like a supply.